Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into a grim, dark fable that honestly serves as a chilling allegorical mirror for something so many of us face: the modern corporate burnout cycle. If you're an executive, a leader, or just someone who relentlessly strives for flawless execution, you're definitely going to want to pay close attention to the story we're mapping out today. Let's start with a really critical question. What actually happens when the ultimate judge turns his gavel on himself? We're going to explore how the total psychological collapse of a character known as the Pale Inquisitor directly maps to the absolute terminal point of toxic perfectionism in high-achieving leaders. It's a dark psychological journey into self-judgment, and honestly, the parallels to executive burnout are literally impossible to ignore. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the Gilded Cage and the Illusion of Control. So, to really understand our starting point, we have to define the underlying psychological state here. The Inquisitor is operating with a superego in absolute overdrive. What does that mean? Well, it means using rigid internal law and uncompromising standards as a literal shield against the chaotic outside world. This perfectly mirrors how executives use strict dogma, relentless frameworks, and rigid KPIs to shield themselves from unpredictable market chaos. It creates a sense of safety, a gilded cage built out of logic and straight lines. Initially, this whole dynamic is completely outward-facing. The Inquisitor projects these mechanical condemnations at the so-called pale criminals. It's exactly like how a modern executive hyper-focuses on mitigating external market threats, crushing competitors, and driving flawless execution out there in the real world. The judgment is entirely external. But what happens when that external focus suddenly stops? Well, that abrupt stop brings us right into Section 2, internalizing the ledger, which marks a very dangerous shift inward. Let's trace the inciting incident of this burnout cycle. Step 1. The external condemnation abruptly ceases. The Inquisitor just stops judging the outside world. Then, in Step 2, he reaches for the red gavel, which is this potent physical symbol of assuming total command over his own psyche. He is literally turning the crushing weight of his inquisitorial ledger inward. And that leads directly to Step 3, the Tribunal of Ash. By striking this gavel, the Inquisitor initiates this Tribunal of Ash, and it is a profoundly self-defeating process. He issues a mandate for total honesty. Now, that sounds noble, right? But in practice, it forces the impossible weight of the inquisitorial ledger directly onto his own shoulders. It's that terrifying moment a leader stops fighting the market and starts ruthlessly interrogating their own self-worth. The turning point here is absolutely profound. The gilded cage of logic and straight lines that once shielded him begins to fail. This inward turn causes the very structures built to sustain his success to completely crumble. They just cannot hold up under the sheer gravity of his impossible perfectionist self-standards. And that structural collapse plunges us straight into Section 3, the blinding whiteout. As this internal decree really takes hold, we witness a terrifying visual and psychological transformation that maps directly to what we'd call severe cognitive overload. The source material explicitly describes how the rigid geometry of his existence, the very frames and panels of his corporate-like cage, melt entirely into a blinding, featureless white void. The straight lines are gone. The logic is just gone. Stripped of all that logic and structure, he surrenders to the void and emerges transformed as the Red Judge. The absolute peak manifestation of the superego has completely taken over. Which brings us to Section 4, the false color red and the evaporating soul. What's truly fascinating about this phase is the grim deception of his new state. I mean, you might look at the color red and naturally assume it means life, passion, or vitality, right? But this redness is explicitly revealed as a false color. The dark reality is that this red is a dying life force. It's a suffocating dark shadow that is actually way deeper than his former courtroom blacks. This false color perfectly represents the soul literally evaporating in the intense heat of rigid internal standards. It's such a powerful illustration of how unyielding dogma doesn't save you. Instead, it plunges you, the professional, right into the very dark void you spent your entire career trying to outrun. And now we reach the terminal point in Section 5, terminal perfectionism and the silence of the heavens. This represents the final, devastating function of the manifested superego, a total abandonment of external hope. The red judge uses the key of abandoned prayer to actually lock away the doors to the kingdom above. Think about it in a corporate context. This is the profound, cynical realization that the divine script, that perfect corporate plan, or the promise that the company will eventually save you and make it all worth it, was merely an illusion all along. It leaves us with this truly chilling realization. No salvation descends from the sky. This is the absolute core of terminal burnout. There is no external rescue coming. You're left entirely alone with the crushing, inescapable weight of your own decisions. This isolation forces the final act, Section 6, the exposed ledger and confronting decay. At the cold, skeletal heart of this internal tribunal, all hollow pretensions finally die. The fable's exposed ledger becomes the very real, burnout reality of seeing an unfiltered view of your life's toll. All the pretense is stripped away. The dual role maps directly to feeling completely trapped in self-blame. And confronting decay is the harsh reality of facing exactly what your toxic standards have done to your life. Because now, the red judge stands as both the judge and the accused. The individual is no longer an objective, rational leader. They're trapped in this vicious, self-defeating loop, interrogating themselves with the exact same ruthless tools they use to manage their business. And it culminates in this incredible quote. They are forced into an inescapable confrontation with the honesty of his own decay. This is the exact truth they spent their entire life and built all those rigid frameworks trying to execute, manage, and control away. The consuming fire of self-reckoning leaves absolutely nowhere to hide. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a critical question. Look closely at your own professional ledger. Ask yourself, is your pursuit of flawless execution just a hollow pretension masking the evaporation of your soul? Are you mistaking the false red color of burnout for the passion of leadership? Beware the tribunal of ash. Because as this source material so brilliantly illustrates, the terminal point of toxic perfectionism isn't triumph. It isn't safety. It's the inescapable, silent void of the red judge. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Take a hard look at your own ledgers out there, and please, take care of yourselves.